want to just introduce our speaker today. At the height of COVID, we decided to forego a luncheon, and we had a community-wide mindfulness, webinar that went on for the whole week. We brought in Dr. Norma Anderson, former president and CEO of the American Psychological Association, first African-American to head up that organization of about 300,000 members. And he did a mindfulness session all week for anyone who wanted to join. We had corporate partners and others. And that was our keynote. So this year, rather than bring a speaker who might share big-time public policy messages about the state of affairs that we're in, we thought that why not bring in an incredible poet, young scholar, someone I've known for close to 20 years. And so I'm just going to kind of read his bio. Matter of fact, I'm going to read what National Public Radio said about him first. Willie Perdomo, a native of East Harlem, has won praise as a hip, playful, historically engaged poet whose restless lyrical language mixes city life with a sense of transcendence. In his fourth collection, The Crazy Bunch, Perdomo returns to his beloved neighborhood to create a vivid kaleidoscope portrait of a crew coming of age in East Harlem at the beginning of the 1990s. In poems written in couplets, vignettes, sketches, and dialogue, Perdomo creates a weekend where surviving members of his crew recall a series of tragic events. That was the summer we all tried to fly. All but one of us succeeded. That's what National Public Radio says of Willie's work. Let me give you a quick introduction. Willie Perdomo is a Puerto Rican poet, a children's book author. He is author of the essential hits of Shorty, a National Book Critics Circle Awards finalist, where a nickel cost a dime. Postcards for Barrio, Smoking Lovely, which received the Pen Beyond Margins Award. His children's book, Visiting Langston, received the Coretta Scott King honor. Perdomo was also a recipient of the New York Foundation for the Arts Poetry Fellowship. He is a Pushcart Prize nominee, recently was a Woolrich Fellow in creative writing at Columbia University. He is also co-founder and publisher of Cyber Books, a Vona Voices faculty member, and is currently an instructor of English at the Phillips Exeter Academy. He is married to Emmy award-winning journalist and writer Sandra Guzman, and he is the 2021 New York State Poet Laureate. And so with that, I give you Willie Perdomo.
Is there any way I can attach this to that? I can do that? Will it hold up?
It won't stay? Let's see if we can both embarrass ourselves. What do you think?
If it stays just like that, I think I'm good.
It won't stay.
Ah, perfect.
Don't breathe.
Microphone check. Can you hear me in the back? Awesome. I'm one of those writers that I revise right up until the end. So I'm going to take my time because I'm filled with notes right now. So bear with me. But I first want to start by saying, welcome to the new people. I'm down with the new people. Happy to be here with you. Congressman Adams pretty much cleared the path for my keynote with her emphasis on poverty and what we do to sort of resist that and the role that hope plays in that. I also want to say that it is an honor, quite an honor, to be in the presence of Ms. Dorothy Counts-Scoggins, and I'm really happy to be here in front of you doing this keynote. I think about James Baldwin and the reaction to the historic photo and how he said he had to leave Paris and become part of the fight. So I hope that I am also sort of engaged in that fight as well. So thank you. I want to thank the Charlotte Area Fund for this invitation. Extend special gratitude to Mr. Terry Howard, Jonas Richardson, and Alvinus Simmons,
Yes.
who made all the travel arrangements. I don't think she's here, but I wanted to thank her as well. The gratitude really extends to my brother Nick Wharton. So he said I've known him for 20 years, but in reality it's more like 32 years. Meaning that I was a college student when I met Nick. I was all of 19 years old. I'm 54 now. And when we were having this discussion yesterday over dinner, it occurred to me that when I made the choice to drop out of college, which is what I did, my first attempt, I quite possibly have missed out on some really valuable mentorship years. But I'm happy that we're reconnected. So thank you for this invitation. I met Nick during my first attempt at college between 1985 and 1987 in Ithaca, New York. He was one of the first teachers, administrators who exemplified community, inclusion, vision, and the role of collective empowerment in education and brotherhood. I say my first attempt at college because student life didn't appeal to me. I was interested in being a writer, a poet more specifically. Poets are the perfect invitees to do keynotes because they have no special interests. They're like Ronins in the metropolis, outlaws in the street. Their primary objective is to distill truth and beauty into a shape or sound that a reader or audience can enter. If you get a message from a poem, it's only because you allowed your soul to open its social clubs, its dance floor without race. I would have to bring my voice down to a whisper. The poem he cited is titled Where I'm From. It's a poem that is rooted heavily in place and seeks to document chaos, domestic violence, a city block in motion. Think of a Romare Bearden painting come to life. It's also a poem that is used widely in secondary schools across the country as a way of inspiring students to write about a specific place. I actually wrote this poem in Ithaca College during the time that Nick Wharton was the director of the Educational Opportunity Program, or EOP. A white student who was from Kentucky and was fond of calling me Wilbur, I don't know why, asked me where I was from. He was my dorm mate, so one day he stopped by my room, started a conversation, and he asked me, where are you from? At that time, the only decoration that I had in my single was a New York City subway map from 1985. I pointed to the 125th Street stop, 125th Street, the Mecca, the nexus of exploding dreams, and said, this is where I'm from. Later that night, I probably turned on my Olympia electric typewriter and started this poem. And I emphasize electric typewriter because it was 1985, 86. I had no laptop, no phone, and I could be heard in my single, not going to class, but typing out these poems, and all you hear was clack, 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 ding, clack, 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 ding, clack, 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 cling. So I'll read where I'm from. Where I'm from. Because she liked the kind of music that I listened to, and she liked the way I walked as well as the way I talked, she always wanted to know where I was from. If I said that I was from 122nd Street in Lexington Avenue, right in the heart of a transported Puerto Rican town, where the jodeadores live and night turns to day without sleep, do you think she might know where I was from? Where I'm from, Puerto Rico stays on our minds when the fresh breeze of café con leche and bread and butter comes through our half-open windows and under our doors while the sun starts to rise. Where I'm from, babies fall asleep to the bark of a German shepherd named Tarzan. We hear his wandering footsteps under a midnight sun. Tarzan has learned quickly to ignore the woman who begs her man to stop slapping her with his fist. Please, baby, por favor, I swear it wasn't me. I swear to my mother, mommy, her dead mother told her that this would happen one day. Where I'm from, Independence Day is celebrated every day. The final gunshot from last night's murders, followed by the vicious knock of a warrant squad coming to take your bread, coffee, and freedom away. Where I'm from, the police come into your house without knocking. They throw us off rooftops, say we slipped. They shoot my father, say he was crazy. They put a bullet in my head, said they found me that way. Where I'm from, you run to the hospital emergency room because some little boy spit a razor out of his mouth and carved a crescent into your face. But you have to understand, where I'm from, even the dead have to wait until their number is called. Where I'm from, you can listen to Big Daddy retelling stories on his corner. He passes his pint, pouring the dead's tributary swig onto the street. Says, I'm the judge and you're in my courtroom now. Where I'm from, it's the late night scratch of rats' feet that explains what my mother means when she says slowly, bueno, mijo, eso la vida del pobre. Well, son, that is the life of the poor. Where I'm from, it's sweet, like my grandmother reciting a quick prayer over a pot of hot rice and beans. Where I'm from, it's pretty, like my niece stopping me in the middle of the street and telling me to notice all the stars in the sky. The danger in reading this poem is that I might get single story, that the reader might construe my life as one extended traumatic experience. That being born Puerto Rican, being born black in East Harlem was to be in a constant maelstrom of dispossession. If you've been paying attention for the last 2 years, most of the country has been living in a state of trauma and fear. But if you really heard the poem, you notice the fracture of light at the end. I come to you today as a poet whose aesthetic prerogatives require hope, if not a fierce determination toward beauty. But the ending implies the following. How many minefields need to be cleared before we can order hope from the menu? Hoping that it's served right. To notice love when it presents itself. To embrace hope when it reaches out for you. I was born in 1967, a year before the end of the civil rights movement. This is not an autobiography, so please don't worry, I'm just giving you context. I like to call myself a post-civil rights baby. A baby that was born into a decade that aimed and put a bullet through hope with the deaths of Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, 2 Kennedys, and cities that were lit into protest hubs. A baby that was born into the hope of upward mobility when my mother decided to move into the Upper Park Avenue Community Association housing project in East Harlem with her own specific hopes, dream books and prayers, saints and traditions, and a special way of making potato salad. I was born 2 months after Langston Hughes made his transition in May 1967. And one day before John Coltrane found a love supreme and started his travel and eternal jam session with what some of us would call God. He died July 17, 1967. This loose chronology of historical and cultural events that symbolize the movement toward promise, a hope of liberation, not freedom necessarily, as freedom is an innately human trait, a default position, whatever our stances. I feel like we're living in a moment where the country is walking toward a dead-end street looking for an identity, and everyone you know is wearing a mask. It would be easy to point to the current ills of deported children, imprisonment of toddlers, rabid militias, proponents of nationalisms that perpetuate hate as its primary doctrine, urban deserts, food deserts, an opioid crisis, high suicide rates, extreme loneliness, the raisin in the sun that democracy might become. But what I'm saying is that hope, in its many manifestations, is delivered piecemeal. And when the delivery person is on the way, the journey is usually impeded by a tire with a slow leak. Hope never seems to get to its destination, so it has to get off and walk. But I would argue that hope didn't have the tools, didn't quite have a definition yet, could only sound itself as a soundbite with an image you hang on to with both hands. That such a kind and soft word like hope was also at one point one of the most dangerous words in the dictionary. I'll start this session with a poem by Miss Lucille Clifton. Won't you celebrate with me? Won't you celebrate with me what I have shaped into a kind of life? I had no model. Born in Babylon, both non-white and woman, what did I see to be except myself? I made it up here on this bridge between starshine and clay. My one hand holding tight my other hand. Come celebrate with me that every day something has tried to kill me and has failed. This poem reads like a prayer, which is, as we know, hope's co-pilot. Prayer takes over when hope decides to take a nap. I teach creative writing workshops, and the saying goes that you write about what you know. And most importantly, you show, you don't tell. At the start of a workshop, I told my class to take out a blank page so that we can practice. The exercise is a list exercise. I will say a word, usually a big, general, abstract word like love, death, mercy, anger, pain, and hope. If I were to write this exercise now in the context of the Charlotte Area Fund, my list would read families, jobs, housing, books, free clinics, volunteers. The great Cuban poet Jose Martí said that every imagination has its own language. So if I asked you to do this exercise today, what would your list look like? What is the language of your imagination as we try to create change? What is the cause of your celebration this morning? What was it that you saw on the way here? The language of hope usually starts with the first person point of view, depending on your values, your priorities, your interests, your desires, your fears. I hope I have the right answer. I hope the MRI comes back negative. I hope you can play the tambourine. I hope I win that scholarship. I hope she says I love you. I hope that we don't get evicted. I hope they like this keynote. I hope I don't get shot tonight. I hope I don't get stopped tonight. I hope I don't get robbed tonight. I hope I don't get chased tonight. I hope they grow trees on my block. I hope the library stays open. I hope I can cop those new airs. I hope my mother doesn't die from COVID. She did. Then the word extends into the first person collective, the we of it, the us, the unit, the family. Hope we win the game. Hope we don't have to go to the shelter. Hope we can make this graduation. Hope we can survive another night. Hope we can get enough milk for the baby. Hope we can pay for the emergency room bill. Hope we can pay tuition. Hope we can get that winter jacket. Hope we can get Sonny off his blues. Hope we can get Shorty off his Jones. Hope we can get Belinda into the spelling bee. Hope we can get June into the program. Hope we don't have enough for it. We hope we have enough for his books. Hope we can go to the parade. Hope we're not part of the charade. That's when you discover that hope needs a plan. A strategy, a budget, good health care, a decent playground, more classrooms, more teachers, more elders, more apples, more oranges, more greens, more kale, more juice, more bread, more exercise, less sugar, more stories. Yes, most especially stories. In her poem, Grace, U.S. Poet Laureate, Native American poet Joe Harjo writes, "I could say Grace was a woman with time on her hands or a white buffalo escaped from memory. But in that dingy light, it was a promise of balance. We once again understood the talk of animals, and spring was lean and hungry with the hope of children and corn. I would like to say, with Grace, we picked ourselves up and walked into the spring thaw. We did. The next season was worse. You went home to Leech Lake to work with the tribe, and I went south. And wind, I am still crazy. I know there is something larger than the memory of a dispossessed people. We have seen it." I'll repeat those two last sentences. I know there is something larger than the memory of a dispossessed people. We have seen it. This last line makes me think of growing up in East Harlem. I think of a holy alliance, the fluidity of consciousness. East Harlem has the highest concentration of housing projects in Manhattan. At one point in the 70s and 80s, it was really a nexus for African-American and Puerto Rican life. It would be simpler for me to just say black life, but that's another conversation. I remember marching down the street as a kid and singing, beep, beep, walking down the street, Ungawa, Black Power. I said it, I meant it. 20 years later, I understood that hope was invested in that march. Hope needed to be conscious. And hope also served free breakfast. But I really bring up East Harlem because I wonder if Langston Hughes on his way out, and we know Langston Hughes was the ultimate dream keeper. Imagine that this young Puerto Rican man-child who lived at 115 East 122nd Street will grow to not just be a poet, to be the New York State Poet Laureate. That the poet in the crew was now the poet of the state. That he would grow up to write books about his block and his friends, including this one that was aptly titled, "They Won't Find Us in Books." And after we officially gained entry into the brotherhood of bad mother flowers, what could our mothers do but lose sleep? Wake into prayer, prepare herbs and apples, cursive the names of our enemies on loose leaf, and let their names dust in the sunlight. Now everything is clean, rezoned and paved, tenements abandoned like whack parties. What is left for us to do but summon bullies from their graves and liberate ourselves from influence? Gone are the old spots near the takeout, old flames where we used to make out, the spots where the light used to fade out, and the letters we wrote from burning buildings. Our shoulders were made of stone. Our evil was translucent. Turn us into mortals so we can cry without judgment. Surrender our cool and watch us morph into men. Let it be known that we chased killer dealers before the cans got kicked for good. We were made from repeating blocks. Holler if you hear us. There was never a once upon a time, because all it takes is one person to get away with it, to get away and get over, to get some and get up. Here we go. Come on. Here we go. You are a history, you said. If being free means burning a few things, then play that number for us straight. The corner was between us and the world. Sometimes you just needed to be okay with not telling. If anyone asks you about your destiny, don't explain. Maybe this is the story we need to turn ourselves into music, bass and bully, a string pulling at both ends. They won't find us in books, you used to say. We practice our lives in lobbies and layaway ganders and goofs, boosting lines from the radio, breaking dynamite styles. We were God bodies. We had God in our bodies. That's what Brother Lowe used to say. He used to say, a man can stand on the corner long enough to see a dream etched on a herb's forehead, to see desperation exit from a subway station, to see a tragic hero came back to reclaim his city. So we downloaded his bars and gems, and no doubt, when it was time to tell our story, out will come fire and spit. Along with hope, we need love. This is true. Except sometimes we just don't know how to use the word. And I'll leave you with this last poem because this is something that I learned when I was a child, that because we didn't know how to use the word, especially amongst the brothers, we had to say things like, that's my heart right there. Don't talk nasty about that person. That's my heart right there. That's to say, I love that person right there. That's my heart right there. We used to say, that's my heart right there, as if to say, don't mess with her right there, as if don't even play, that's a part of me right there. In other words, okay, that's the start of me right there. As if come that day, that's the end of me right there. As if push come to shove, I would fend for her right there. As if come what may, I would lie for her right there. As if come love to pay, I would die for that right there. With hope. Thank you.